Hi class, in this video we are starting with operant conditioning, and the first thing I want you to do is answer a couple of questions and then we'll go over the answers. So first question I want you to answer is here, and the next question I want you to answer is here. Okay, so let's go over these answers. Are you happy when you get negative reinforcement? The answer is yes. You love negative reinforcement. You are thrilled if you get negative reinforcement because negative reinforcement is when a bad thing you don't like is taken away from you. You like it. Next question. What is more effective in training, punishment or reinforcement? It is reinforcement. It is much better to reinforce the behavior you want than to punish the behavior you do not want. You get what you want faster. So let's go over some definitions with this and what exactly is operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is when organisms learn to associate a behavior and its consequences. So this is voluntary behaviors. Unlike classical conditioning, which was involuntary behaviors, operant conditioning involves voluntary behaviors. You know what the consequence of your behavior is going to be. If it is a good consequence, you'll see that behavior more. If it's a bad consequence, you'll see that behavior less. So that is generally what operant conditioning is. Operant conditioning is based on the law of effect, and the law of effect says that behaviors that are followed by consequences that are satisfying to the organism are more likely to be repeated. If something good happens when you do something, you're more likely to do that thing again. Edward Thorndike is the one who created this idea of the law of effect, and so Thorndike said, if it's a good outcome, you'll do it more. If there's an unpleasant consequence, you're less likely to do it. And he basically used a puzzle box with cats to figure this out. And when the cats did a behavior and it led to them getting out of the box, next time they were put in that box, they did that behavior faster. If a certain behavior didn't help them get out of the box, the next time they didn't do that behavior as much. If you think about Skinner boxes, we tend to think of it as rats pressing a bar to get water or something, but more often than not, it's pigeons pecking a circle. If they get food for pecking that circle, they're going to do it more. If they get an electric shock when they peck that circle, they're going to do it a whole lot less. So for operant conditioning, there are 4 types. You need to know these types. You need this straight in your head. I would have this table in your notes. When we talk about operant conditioning, there's 2 variables. One is whether you give something or whether you take something away. And that thing you give or take is either a good thing or a bad thing. If you give somebody something, we call that positive. Positive is not a value judgment here. It's just like with correlations. Positive doesn't mean good, negative doesn't mean bad. All positive means with operant conditioning is that you give the person something. Negative means take. So you take something away from the person. What lets you know if the person's going to be happy or not, if this is something they're excited about or something they're sad about, is when you combine it with the good thing or the bad thing. If you give somebody something good, they're going to be happy about it. It's called a reinforcement. Reinforcements in general are things you're happy about. Punishments are things you're not happy about. If you give somebody an undesired thing, they're not happy about it, so that's going to be a punishment. If you take a good thing away from somebody, that's a punishment. They're not happy about that. If you take away a bad thing from somebody, they're happy about that. That bad thing they don't like goes away. For example, if you have a 10 p.m. curfew when you were in high school, and your parents said, if you come home with straight A's, we'll get rid of your curfew for the weekend. You won't have to be home at 10. Chances are you're going to work harder to get those straight A's because you want that bad thing. You want that curfew taken away. So take is negative, give is positive. You call it a reinforcement if you're happy at the end of it. You call it a punishment if you're sad at the end of it. So positive reinforcements and negative reinforcements, the two things you're happy about, are both going to increase the behavior. You are going to do the behavior more because you want that thing. You want that bad thing taken away. You want that good thing to come. Punishments always decrease behavior, weaken behavior. You don't want a bad thing given to you. You don't want a good thing taken away. Punishments decrease behavior. Reinforcements increase or strengthen a behavior. So if on the test you have to say, is this, what type of operant conditioning does this go through it? Are you giving somebody something? Are you taking something away? Are they happy about this or are they sad about it? And that's when you can figure out, is it positive or negative reinforcement, positive or negative punishment. So before we get into a couple more details with this, answer these questions to see if you have it straight in your head. Okay, so now that we have that settled a little bit, let's get into some specifics. Shaping. What shaping is it is when you reward successive approximations of a target behavior. What that means, what a successive approximation is. For example, what's a good example? My dog, I'm using shaping with my dog right now. My dog, who is this, one of my dogs, is this tiny little Westie. He's this little white 15-pound dog who thinks he's big and scary. And whenever we're walking around the neighborhood, there is this enormous German Shepherd that lives on the next block. Behind this, all the houses here have big gates, and it's a see-through gate, so you can see this German Shepherd on the other side of his gate. And my dog loses it when he sees this German Shepherd. He's just barking, he's trying to charge at it. My dog would not win that fight. And the German Shepherd doesn't care. He's not barking at this tiny Westie. So I am using shaping with my dog, where every day I have him sit and just sit there for 30 seconds close to that house. And every day we do this a few times and we get closer and closer. And if he sits there quietly and he doesn't try to charge at the gate, he doesn't try to bark at this German Shepherd, he gets a treat. And so we've been doing this for a couple of weeks. I've got a very stubborn dog, but now he can get within 10 feet of the German Shepherd and he doesn't freak out. He doesn't bark or try to charge. So far, if it's any closer than that, there's a freak out, but that's how close we can get. Before I started this, if we were within 30 feet of that German Shepherd, he was just going to lose it. So every day we are baby stepping our way closer and closer to my goal of being able to walk by this German Shepherd's house without my dog freaking out. So that's shaping. I couldn't just say one day, I've decided you're no longer going to bark at this other dog. No, that was too big of an ask for my tiny dog. I am slowly, every day, getting closer and closer to that desired goal. And I'm using positive reinforcement to do it because he gets a treat when he does the behavior and he doesn't bark. If you want to teach your dog to roll over and play dead, you're going to use shaping with those successive approximations. You're not going to just say one day, you get a treat if you roll over and play dead. It's not going to happen. At first, he gets the treat if he lays down. Then when he lays down and rolls over part way. Then when he lays down and rolls over the whole way. Then when he rolls over the whole way and doesn't move. You get yourself to what you want. That's what shaping is. Primary and secondary reinforcers are versions of things that are going to do reinforcement. That's what we call them, reinforcers. Primary reinforcers are reinforcing innately. They have innate reinforcing qualities. It's things you don't have to learn. This is things like water, food, sleep, shelter, touch. This is me giving a treat to my dog. This is you getting praise from someone when you do what they want. So if you don't have to learn this reinforcement, it's just naturally reinforcing. It's a primary reinforcer. Secondary reinforcers are ones that have to be learned. Secondary reinforcers have no inherent value. They only use reinforcing qualities because they're linked with a primary reinforcer. Technically, praise is linked with affection, so that could be seen as a secondary reinforcer, or like tokens would be secondary reinforcers. For example, my son had something called dojo points when he was in Maryland, where when he acted well in school, he was given dojo points. Who cares about dojo points? Except that he could trade those in for things like being able to bring a stuffed animal to school or being able to wear his pajamas in a day. So in and of themselves, they're not reinforcing, but they're connected to a primary reinforcer. And tokens are those things that you trade for the reward, the reinforcer, the prize, whatever it's going to be. Question for you now to see if you know the answer to this. What is the most powerful? Fixed interval, variable interval, fixed ratio, or variable ratio? Let's go through these and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each of these. The answer, by the way, is variable ratio. Let's figure out why. For these different types, you can have continuous reinforcement. If you continuously reinforce, it means every time you do that behavior, you get the prize, you get the reinforcer. None of these are that. These are different. If you are going to have partial reinforcement, it means that you don't get the reward every single time. You don't get the reinforcer after every action. And there's a couple of different ways this can happen, a couple of different variables that go into it. If it is fixed, that means that you have a number of responses or a certain amount of time between the reinforcements. And that is set, it's unchanging. So every third time or every 2 minutes, that sort of thing. If it is going to be variable, what that means is that the number of responses or the amount of time between reinforcements varies, changes. So it could be after 2 times, and then after 5 times, and then after 3 times, or 1 minute, and then 5 minutes, and then 2 minutes. So it's either fixed or it's variable. The other factor in this is it interval or is it ratio? If it's interval, what that means is that the schedule is based on the time between reinforcements. So fixed interval is it's every 1 minute or it's every 5 minutes. Variable interval means that it's 2 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 3 minutes. So what varies is the time. For ratio, what that means is that the schedule is based on the number of responses between reinforcements. So fixed ratio is the after 2 times, after 5, or every time after 2 times, or after 5 times, or after every 10 times. Variable ratio is, it could be 2 times, and then they have to do it 6 times, and then they need to do it 8 times, and then they have to do it 4 times. It varies how many times they have to do it before the rewards. And so when you do the variable ratio, where it varies based on how many times they have to do it, that is going to be the strongest. Because if you do, we'll focus on why based on these 2 components. If you do fixed, if the person knows that it's every 2 minutes, they're not going to do anything for 1 minute and 55 seconds. Like, why? They know it's not going to lead to anything. Or if it's, every 3 times, then they'll do it 3 times really fast, and then they'll take a break till they feel like doing it again. But they know it's going to be 3 times, they don't need to do it. So the fixed, that's why fixed doesn't work as well. If it's variable, they're not sure. Like, maybe this will be the time. For the variable interval versus ratio, the reason ratio is better is that if it is based on time, it doesn't work as well for the getting them to consistently do it, because once they have the reward and the time is done, it could be like 5 minutes till it happens again. They can just sort of chill and wait for that time to come. If it is ratio, it's the number of times they do it. What if they do it 1 more time and that's when they get the prize? And so they're going to be more likely to do it if it's variable ratio, because they're more assuming that it's about to come. So overall, the most powerful is variable ratio. The others have benefits to them. So for example, fixed ratio gives you a higher quantity of times they do it, because they know if it's 3, they'll do it 3 really fast. So you'll get more in a shorter amount of time. Whereas fixed interval, like every 30 seconds, is going to give you higher quality. But overall, variable, especially variable ratio, is going to be the most powerful. It's going to be the hardest to have extinction in the end. And fixed interval, the one based on time and it's fixed, that is the one that is least productive. That's the one that is easiest for extinction to happen, because if it's every minute and they go a minute and they don't get it, they're already starting to think, wait, is this not a thing anymore? So easiest for extinction as well for a fixed interval. Okay, so actually, before I do this, I'm going to show you a video now from the Big Bang Theory. And what I want you to do is find the mistake. They have, there's a couple mistakes listed. I want you to see if you can figure out, based on what you know now with operant conditioning, what is a mistake that they have found. So watch this video and see if you can answer that.
Are you finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please. Yeah, you know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall. You'll never guess who they got to replace you at work.
Okay. I know what you're doing.
Really?
Yes. You're using chocolates as positive reinforcement for what you consider correct behavior.
Very good. Chocolate?
No, I don't want... Sheldon, you can't train my girlfriend like a lab rat.
Actually, it turns out I can.
Well, you shouldn't.
There's just no pleasing you, is there, Leonard? You weren't happy with my previous approach to dealing with her, so I decided to employ operant conditioning techniques, building on the works of Thorndike and B.F. Skinner. Yet by this time next week, I believe I can have her jumping out of a pool, balancing a beach ball on her nose.
No, this has to stop now.
I'm not suggesting we really make her jump out of a pool. I thought the bazinga was implied. I'm just tweaking her personality, just sanding off the rough edges, if you will.
No, you're not sanding Penny.
Are you saying that I am forbidden from applying a harmless, scientifically valid protocol that will make our lives better?
Yes, you're forbidden.
Bad, Leonard. You know, using positive reinforcement techniques, I could train that behavior out of her in a week.
No.
If you let me use negative reinforcement, I can get it done before we go to bed.
You're not squirting her in the face with water.
No, of course not. We're talking very mild electric shocks. No tissue damage whatsoever.
Forget it.
Oh, come on. You can't tell me that you're not intrigued about the possibility of building a better girlfriend.
I'm not. Penny's qualities, both good and bad, are what make her who she is.
You mean like that high-pitched, irritating laugh?
Yes.
You wouldn't prefer a throaty chuckle?
You're not changing how Penny laughs.
No, that would be incongruous. No, I was going to lower the whole voice to a more pleasing register.
Sorry, guys. That girl is freaky.
Come again?
Freaky.
Freaky?
Yeah, freaky.
Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to make some warm milk and then turn in. I trust if you two are planning on engaging in amorous activities, you'll keep the decibel level to a minimum.
Of course.
Thank you.
These are so good.
Unbelievable.
And so, to recap that, in case you weren't totally sure, a couple of mistakes. One is he called the negative reinforcement, he called the shocks and the water negative reinforcement. It's not. Both of those things are positive punishment. Remember, you like negative reinforcement, so it was the wrong label. The other mistake was that he was talking about, if I can use mild electric shocks, I can get it done by the end of the day or something like that. That is not true. Reinforcements work better than punishments. So it is not true that if you use punishment, they'll learn faster. Reinforcements are more effective than punishments. So those are two of the mistakes that you could have potentially mentioned. Okay, so now I'm going to go over Tolman. So I'm going to describe this, and then you have to answer what you think the answer is. For this, Tolman was studying operant conditioning. So the people that created operant conditioning, like Skinner, they're pretty hardcore on the idea that if you don't have reinforcements and punishments, learning isn't happening. The way you learn is through reinforcements and punishments. Without them, no learning can happen. And so Tolman was working on a experiment connected with this. And I'm actually going to, before I show this, I'm going to draw how this looked. Okay, here we go. So, what happened? For this, Tolman put some mice through a maze. And what happened was that there were 3 separate conditions. So I'm going to do this based on color for you. Okay. What he did was he had 3 groups of mice, rats, whatever. The first group, actually, hold on. Was reinforced from the very beginning. So there was, I don't know, cheese at the end of the maze. The assumption being if there's a reinforcement, cheese at the end of the maze, you're going to learn how to get through the maze. And so, as you can imagine, that group learned pretty fast how to get through the maze, and that's like, I don't know, as fast as the mice could get through. By the way, this is the 10-day mark. So he did this every day for a while. So that's the group, always had cheese waiting at the end of the maze. Next group never had cheese at the end of the maze. There was never a reinforcement at the end. And so according to classical conditioning, or not classical, operant conditioning, hello, what they saw, they never got any faster. So the operant conditioning people would say they never learned how to get through it. Because there was no reinforcement there, they never learned how to get through the maze. My question for you is, actually, let me see how I phrase this so that I can make sure I do it correctly with the numbers. My question for you is, the group, there was the third group, got cheese starting at day 10. First 10 days, no cheese at all. Starting at day 10, there is cheese there. So my question for you is, what did their maze run look like? Here are your options. So option A, when you answer this question, is that they started to learn how to get through the maze and got faster once they were reinforced. So first 10 days, they're nice and slow. And then starting when they start to get the cheese, that's when they start to learn. And option B is their time stayed slow. So too much time had passed. They just stayed up here the whole time. They stayed slow. Or option C is they immediately went through the maze as fast as the group that was always reinforced. So the first 10 days they're up here, then they get the cheese, and then it is like that. So, which of those 3 is it? They start to learn when the cheese comes. At that point, it's too late. They never learn. Or they immediately start going as fast as the group that always got the cheese. So, put your answer now. The answer is C. This is what it looked like. So again, C, they immediately went through the maze as fast as the group that was always reinforced. What this shows is something called latent learning. And latent learning is learning that remains hidden until showing it becomes useful. until there's a reason to demonstrate it. What Tolman found out is that you don't need reinforcements or punishments to learn. You need reinforcements and punishments to show learning that naturally happens. So these rats, all the rats in all three conditions, were creating a cognitive map. We're creating a map in their head of what this maze looked like. But the groups that weren't getting the cheese had no reason to show that they were creating that map, and so they didn't. As soon as there was a reason to show that map had been created, then they were willing to show it. The final thing I want to talk about connected to observational learning, and the final thing we'll do in this video, we'll have a short third video where I just talk about observational learning, is when it comes to, I mentioned this before, reinforcements work better than punishments. This is one of the hardest things for y'all to remember and to actually believe. A lot of people think punishments are most effective. For example, if a kid is really misbehaving, people are just like, you just need to punish him more, or you need to spank him. No, punishments don't work as well as reinforcements. It doesn't mean you do nothing. Doing reinforcements doesn't mean you don't address problem behavior, but it means you address it using reinforcements of desired behavior. This isn't just for kids, this is everyone. If you had a job and you could either get 2 lists, one of everything that would get you fired immediately, or a list of everything that's expected of you to do, everything that'll get you a bonus, which of those 2 lists do you want? You want the list of what you're supposed to do. If you don't know what's expected of you, how are you going to do it? Reinforcements tell you what is expected of you. Reinforcements work faster. Punishments don't work as fast. And they aren't effective, especially physical positive punishment. Positive punishment basically being spanking. I'm going to tell you why that is the worst form of positive punishment you can use. Physical positive punishment does not lead to a permanent decrease in the behavior. It suppresses the behavior while you're with the person who's going to hurt you, while you're with the person who's going to spank you. But when that person is not there, the behavior is going to return. If you use reinforcements, the behavior sticks around even when that person is not there. So you get limited obedience if you use physical positive punishment. You're basically teaching them stimulus discrimination. I'm allowed to misbehave in front of these people, but not in front of this person because this person hurts me. You also teach the kid to be more aggressive. Kids who have positive physical punishment used against them are more physically aggressive themselves. So we'll talk about in the next video, you do what you see. If you learn when my parents are, they hit, then what are you going to do when you're mad? You're going to hit. Kids cannot differentiate between this is what I'm doing for your own good as a way to teach you versus that's when you're just mad. No, because parents are hitting when they're mad. So you're more likely to get aggressive children if they are spanked. And so you see this, kids who have physical positive punishment used against them are more likely to be violent even as adults. They're more likely to get arrested for violent crimes. There's a whole trajectory of not so great stuff. You also teach them fear. They learn to be afraid of the person who's physically punishing them. They're not learning to actually behave better. So if your goal is actually to decrease behaviors you don't want, the way to get that is by rewarding behaviors you do want, making it explicit. Here is the good thing you're going to get when you do what I want. That is going to get a faster change in behavior. And that will be it for this video.